Hey, what's going on, boys? We are on day number 4, reading through the book of Deuteronomy. I just want to clarify that I know in yesterday's video I said we were on day 4. Yesterday we were actually reading through Deuteronomy 3, so today is the official day 4, Deuteronomy 4, so I apologize if you got a little bit confused with that. So, for today we're going to be looking at a pretty long passage. This passage is about 50 verses long, so a pretty long one, and I think that this is a very important passage to kind of clarify what Joshua and the Israelites are being sent off to do by Moses, as Moses has been receiving these commandments from God, and he is going to remind Joshua and the Israelites about the covenant made with Moses and the Israelites as they were led out of Egypt, and they are now heading towards the promised land that they were told that they would receive from their ancestors. So the first thing I want to take a look at is what exactly it means to obey God's commands. And verse 2 does a really excellent job of explaining that for us. It says, do not add to what I command you, and do not subtract from it, but keep the commands of the Lord your God that I give you. So Moses is saying to them, in order for us to obey God's commands, in order for us to really truly stay faithful and, grow with, ourselves and grow closer to God, is to obviously, number one, listen to his commands, but number two, it's to obey them. So this means that God's commands cannot be altered and cannot be changed to fit your matter. So a lot of times when we are told to do something, whether it's with a certain part of our job or with school or with our family, we always want to try and change it to make it kind of fit our needs, where we're basically comfortable, to where we're like, okay, well, maybe I can just change it up a little bit and I can make it to where I'm comfortable. But with God, you can't do that. God is not going to change for you. You have to change for God. And I want to clarify that doesn't mean that you have to try and make yourself right before God. That's not what it means. God, you still need to come as you are before God. But what happens afterwards, that's where you start to change. God is going to provide you with the information on how you can change. And that's where you have to be like, okay, well, I have this information. How am I going to utilize it? How am I going to implant it into my heart to grow as an individual? And the only way you can do that is by literally taking exactly what he says and displaying it in your life. So you can't change it, you can't alter it, you can't say, well, I'll just change this around and I'll do BAD instead of, ABC, or, vice versa, or whatever. You have to follow, rules. It's steps 1, 2, 3, not steps 2, 1, 3. It's not like that. And the next set of verses is a very well reminder to us why we should do this. Verses 6 through 8 says, observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding to the nations who will hear about all these decrees and say, surely this great nation is wise and understanding people. What other nation is so great to have their gods near them the way that our Lord our God is near us whenever we pray to him? And what other nation is so great as to have such righteous decrees and laws as this body of laws I am setting before you today? So the ultimate reason why we should obey God's commands is because it will really truly show if you are really, observing and doing it right. So if you are taking God's commands and you are implementing it directly into what he says, then you will grow closer to God. You will grow as an individual. But if you were taking it, and even if you're changing one thing around, one little step, that's going to be the difference between you succeeding and you not succeeding, or the difference between you, being a leader and you not being a leader. Because ultimately, I believe that we are called to be followers of Christ, because Jesus calls us to be his followers, his disciples. But ultimately, what I think is happening is that he says, okay, follow me. And then we have to build ourselves to become that leader to other people. It's not our job to just be followers our entire lives. For a certain period of time, you're following, you are listening along. But then it comes time for you to say, okay, then it comes time for God to say, okay, let's put you out there and I want you to share that knowledge. Let's see how much you've been paying attention. And you'll know if you've been paying attention or not, because people will come ask you questions, and based on how you respond to them, that's how you'll realize, okay, well, man, I didn't really pay attention to that. I need to work on that. Or I didn't know about this. I need to work more on that, or I need to do this a little bit more. So that's the whole reason why we obey God's commands. And we never know when we're going to be put up for this test. We don't know. There's not like a set calendar that says, okay, you're going to be tested on Thursday, and then you're going to be tested on next month or next year. You don't really know. It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be next year. You don't really know. So that's why you always have to stay prepared, always obey, and always be up for a challenge that is going to be thrown your way. So, continuing on, one of the other things that Moses is going to share with Joshua and the Israelites before they set off. Obviously, he makes a continuation saying, "Hey, don't forget what God did for you to defeat those two kings, King Sihon and King Og." And he's going to remind them, say, "Okay, I don't want you to fall into idolatry." We've talked about idolatry plenty of times. It's worshiping of things that are man-made, that are not from God. So I actually want to connect two different sections of this part where it talks about idolatry forbidden. I want to connect verses 15b through 18, and I also want to connect verse 23. They both almost say the exact same thing, but they are different, but they kind of meet in the middle almost. So first off, verses 15b through 18 says, "Therefore watch yourselves very carefully, so that you do not become corrupt, and make yourselves an idol, an image of any shape, whether formed like a man or a woman, or like any animal on the earth, or like any bird that flies in the air, or like any creature that moves along the ground, or any fish that waters below." And then verse 23, "Be careful not to forget the covenant, the Lord your God, that he made with you. And do not forget yourselves an idol in form of anything that the Lord your God has forbidden." So, idolatry. We've talked about it a lot. It's something that is a pretty common topic, that is something we all kind of fall into. And probably the most common form of idolatry in today's world is social media. We all are prone to being led by it. A popular thing that we all tend to do is doom scroll. I myself have found myself in that plenty of times. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't do it at all, because I do. Instagram is just a big inspiration on so many lives. But what I can tell you is that you start to realize how much of a toll it takes on your life, because when you start sitting there and let these things take over your life, you become unorganized. You can lose your temper sometimes, and you lose self-control. One of the things that I've noticed is that I fall into more sin when I'm unorganized, when I'm not focused, and this all kind of stimulates back to what I am exposing myself to. And these can be simple things of just being lazy or scrolling on my phone, but I've learned to kind of, channel that into, okay, I'm going to limit myself and say, okay, like, if I can limit myself, I can slowly start to see what I can do to organize myself. I can see, okay, I'm not waiting till the last minute to try and get these things done. Like, I am focusing on what is important, trying to get the important things done first, and then utilizing my spare time to then, whether it's talk with friends or kind of look and see what's going on online. So then, what's interesting is Moses says, be careful not to forget God's covenant. And this particular covenant that is made isn't like the covenants that are in the past. It's the covenant of the 10 Commandments. Now, the 10 Commandments are probably, the most influential set of pieces of, I guess you could say, rules that, well, I wouldn't even say rules, but just, ways of life that we should never forget. And while the 10 Commandments aren't brought up in chapter 4, they are brought up in chapter 5, and I am very eager to go over that tomorrow. But, the 10 Commandments are a thing. Obviously, we know that God went up on the Mount Sinai, and that the commandments were put on these 2 tablet stones, and Moses would come down and share with the Israelites and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so the whole point of that is we only need to follow what God has called us to do. We don't need to be following these things that are man-made. We don't need to be following these things that aren't going to benefit us. It actually talks about, for those who do become corrupt to these idolatry figures or beings, that they will be misled, and they are essentially worshiping, whether it's a specific person or an object that value none of the senses that God has. Sometimes these things that they worship are literal, like, things that are not even alive. So things like, it could be like a rock or a tree. It sounds crazy, but it talks about in here that says, these things that they're worshiping are things that are not of any value. It says that these things which cannot see, cannot hear, or eat, or smell. Verse 28, just by the way. And it's tough, because these things that I just listed, these traits, are traits that we cherish. However, when we worship other people, they're making their own mistakes. So why would I want to worship somebody or something that, number one, does not benefit my life drastically, that I still fall into sin, I still make mistakes. And number two, why would I worship someone else who also makes mistakes? And I'm not saying you shouldn't, go out and be friends with other people, but it's more of, why am I going to try and, mimic someone else's life when they're making mistakes, doing their own things, but yet I'm trying to benefit? If I want to better my life, if I want to better myself, I'm looking for somebody that is, essentially perfect, that is, he knows all my troubles, he can answer all my questions, and he can really, show me the ways of life. And that's exactly who God is. God is not this God that is just trying to sit there and call you out for your mistakes. He looks for you. He seeks you. He's always there with you. Verses 29 through 31 says, "But if you from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in distress and all these things have happened to you, then in later days you will return to the Lord your God and obey him. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not abandon or destroy or forget the covenant with your ancestors, which he confirmed to them by oath." So what a great kind of way of finishing off that with saying that no one is too far from God. I do believe that anybody on this planet can turn to God. Even the most corrupt people, the people who are just so far from God, the people you would never think would have a chance. I do believe that they can. All the adulterers, the wicked people, the atheists. I believe that anybody can be called by God. Anybody can turn to God. Anybody. So this leads me to my last set of verses that is in the section called "The Lord is God." So, as we know, the land that was promised to the ancestors of the Israelites is now coming into effect for these current day descendants of those past Israelites. And this is the section I want to read real quick, and then I want to kind of analyze it. Verse 37 through 40. "Because he loved your ancestors and chose their descendants after them, he brought you out of Egypt by his presence and his great strength, to drive out before you nations greater and stronger than you, and to bring, you into their land, and give it to you as your inheritance, as it is today. Acknowledge and take heart this day that the Lord is God in heaven above and on the earth below. There is no other. Keep his decrees and commands, which I am giving you today, so that it may go well and with you and your children after you, and that you may live long in the land the Lord your God gives you for all time." So the Lord is always going to keep his promise. He doesn't forget. He doesn't forget. Sometimes we think he forgets, but he doesn't. And that's what's so great about God's power, is that God is so powerful that we think that he is only prone to doing things that benefit us. But God is so much more powerful than we could ever imagine. So much more powerful. So if someone ever tells you, well, if God's so powerful, why doesn't he do the things of the world? Well, because there's just things that we just don't understand about him. We're not God. We're human. We're mortal. Our brains are nothing compared to his. God is so powerful. He is so great. We don't know his ways. All we know is that he's good and he's holy and he cares about us. Like, yeah, God could eliminate all the evil in the world, but he doesn't. He gives us second chances all the time because he loves us. He created each and every one of us in his own image. And while sometimes we may turn away from God and point our fingers at God and say, God, you did this to me. I can't do this anymore. God still loves you. God doesn't hate you. He doesn't. God looks at you as his child. He looks at you as his creation that he made when you were in your mother's womb. And that's how he looks at you all the time. And now it's our job to look at others as creations of God, to exalt into others as God exalts into us. And sometimes that takes a little bit of discipline and a little bit of devotion. And sometimes, most importantly, it takes time. And that leads me to the final part of today. We are in the Daily Prayer 365 Power Prayer Sermon. We are on August 5th. And today's title is called Peace Abounding. And the verse connected to it is Isaiah chapter 32, verse 18. My people will live free from worry and secure quiet homes of peace. God, you know that my prosperity to pursue things other than you lends to my worry. I get fixated on what others have or what I don't, and I allow this world to cave in on my contentment. When this happens, I need you to remind me of the great things that you have for me and the freedom you have given me from being enticed by this world. I want to see more clearly the way I want to see more clearly the way of escape you have already provided. I pray that all who encounter my home, my family, and my life would find peace abounding. So God promised us a home of peace, and sometimes that means that we have to implement His commands into our lives. We can't change them. We can't try to make them comfortable for us. We have to adapt. And that's the only way we'll grow, because the world wants you to be soft. But you have to be tough. You have to turn your back and say, no, I am a child of God. I am a soldier. I'm going to do what God calls me to do. The world has no power over me. God is my leader. He is my Lord. He is my Savior. And I believe that He will lead us in great ways that we can never do on our own. And that is today's word. I hope that you guys have had a great Tuesday, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Peace out, boys.